The last Langstaff letter on the post-pandemic church brought significant comments, so I thought I'd follow it up with part two. Let's start with a reminder that as we looked at the paradigm shifts that have happened in the church in recent times, we considered paradigm shifts that could happen in the post-pandemic church. I suggested three areas of change that could shape the wineskin, not the wine. In other words, the shape and the structure of the church, not its essential message. I said, first of all, the digital revolution. Secondly, retaining the personal touch, especially through small groups. And finally, building a counterculture community within the church. So let's look at some of the issues that face the post-pandemic church. The first one is a question: will they return? There are two main groups of people that have not been physically attending church. Those that were either not able or not permitted to attend church. And secondly, those who could have attended church but chose not to do so to avoid contact with people and possibly the COVID-19 virus. Now, there's a question as to how many of these people will return to church. No one knows for sure, but it is certain that not all of those people will return. Take this email I received. Quote, "I'm still working through your latest blog. It's certainly a timely one. I found myself becoming quite comfortable staying home and live streaming instead of making the effort to haul out to church. Lately, we have chosen that option because my husband has been getting a lot of dental work done, and he did not want to risk getting COVID and having the whole process interrupted. For me, I find I go out a lot all week, and that's really nice to just stay home on Sundays. We go to church's growth group meetings on a Monday night, and I attend a ladies' Bible study on a Tuesday night. I have no issue attending these activities. Maybe live streaming is all going to be part of the post-pandemic culture. It's really nice for times when people are sick or a young family has sick ones who need to stay at home." End of quote. I want you to notice those words. I have found myself becoming quite comfortable staying home and live streaming instead of making the effort to haul out to church. Note too that she was still involved in small relational groups within the church. The post-pandemic church will have to work on convincing people of the importance and the value of being a gathered church community again and coming together. Nextly, the digital effect on the life of the church. One reader from Germany wrote, "I've had conversations as to how the pandemic might change the church short term and long term. Worship services have been very restricted here, and one of the concerns is how to keep in touch with members. The Barna report says 3 in 5 church adults, that's 63%, believe churches should continue leveraging digital resources for discipleship, even after the pandemic is resolved. Also, the Barna Group has a program to help churches combine digital and in-person opportunities to meet the needs of the people. In other words, you're developing a hybrid church, the internet and personal contacts through small groups." Then we need to think about a paradigm shift with marriage and family. The pandemic has placed an added stress on marriage and family. At the same time, it's a call for the post-pandemic church to serve the needs of marriage and family. One Minnesota Twin City leader wrote to me this way, quote, "People need the relational component in a increasingly secularized post-Christian society. The pandemic is driving people home to work and to home to do school. There'll be a reversal of some of that when the social restrictions are lifted and people can go back again. but I expect to see more people working from home, which it seems is coming full cycle back to the agrarian society where the economic life of the family was in the home. I think it's a good thing. I do think marriage and family need to be rediscovered as the primary centre of evangelizing and discipling people. Problem is most people have little understanding of how to do that because we have such a church-building based approach to life. Marriage isn't even a priority in the traditional church. 80% of the traditional churches spend $0 ministry dollars on marriage ministry. End of quote. And so a call in the post-pandemic church is to give more attention to marriage and family. And then think about finances in the post-pandemic church. With church services closed or restricted, the issue of adequate financing arose, along with the need for alternative means of making contributions and offerings to the church. Those churches which anticipated the advent of electronic commerce in an essentially cashless society and have trained their congregation to contribute that way were prepared. Others were not. In the year before the virus struck, I visited a dozen churches or so in the Minneapolis-St. Paul, Twin Cities area. I wanted to see what was happening in other churches. In one of the largest churches in the Twin Cities, there was no offering and no mention of an offering in that particular service, albeit there were collection boxes in the offering in the foyer, which I used. If you wanted to give, they were there. They had obviously taught the congregation other ways to give. Incidentally, I feel that there should be reference to giving and prayer offered in the worship service, as giving is a part of worship, even if it's received electronically. And then think about travelling ministries in a post-pandemic world. I have a number of ministry friends who up to 12 months ago were continually travelling in ministry both in America and across the world. Many of them have had all that dry up as they've been forced to sit at home waiting for the pandemic to end. I felt for many of them who depend on the honorariums received in ministry travel to fund their ministry. I rejoice in the stories I hear from them of how God has stepped in and provided funds in miraculous ways. One wonders if there will be fewer travelling ministries and more Zoom meetings. A friend who travels extensively told me he has already done a Zoom conference, and there's possibly one coming up in Korea. He commented, "Of course I prefer in person, but we'll see what happens." Similar things are happening with missionaries. I know of a number of missionaries who can't get back to their country they are called to because of the travel restrictions. These ministries and missionaries need our prayers. Now, I want you to think of the global church in a post-pandemic era, not just America. In the previous Langstaff letter, I failed to state that I was particularly writing about the post-pandemic church in America. I mentioned Joel Osteen's congregation as being the largest one, but did not say in America. One reader from Australia pointed this out to me. Quote, "Perhaps you meant only the biggest in the USA, which is no doubt true, but it's certainly not true the biggest in the world. That honour probably belongs to the Glory Dome in Nigeria, which seats 100,000 people under a single roof. I believe also that another church in Nigeria plans this year to open an even bigger auditorium." End of quote. Another leader, this one from Florida, wrote, "I've been watching for the next solid and observable move of God and have been increasingly disappointed by what I have seen. I also knew that the COVID crisis, which became worse from bureaucratic mismanagement, spelled human government, had the potential to radically impact the contemporary church models and to expose the global malefficiency in the are going to uncover. However, in my hunger, I found incredible results happening in the global south with the discipleship making movement, DMM, which is impacting the kingdom with 100,000 of conversions in hard places like Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, China, and so on, South America and Africa. I submit this is the global paradigm that may well represent the great revival we've all been anticipating. Widespread, impactful, and thoroughly biblical, the DMM movement is actually making obedient disciples via small house churches. This is going to be one of the Western USA, European, Global North churches' greatest challenges, to face their present model and the imposed changes underway to complete the Great Commission. Let me finish with a closing word. You can see there is a lot to be considered about the post-pandemic church. In some ways, I wish I was young again. It would be exciting to accept the challenge to seek the Lord as to how to build a church in the midst of a paradigm shift. You have to remember what Psalm 127, verse 1 says. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. So we need to know what the Lord wants us to do. In this coming post-pandemic paradigm shift, may the leaders and the congregations of his church rise up and meet the challenges of a new day. May they seek the Lord's guidance to discover his plans for his church in a post-pandemic age. The best is yet to be. God bless you all.
Thank you for listening to the Langstaff Letter with Dr. Alan Langstaff. The Langstaff Letter is produced by Frontline Ministries, a ministry of Kairos Ministries. If you'd like to join a discussion about this edition, you can go to Dr. Langstaff's blog at kairosmin.org. We look forward to having you join us back again next week. And remember, the best is yet to be.